There seems to be a lot going on at the minute. I did the video on Friday where I talked about... What was it I was talking about? But either way, something else popped up over the weekend that I thought might be interesting, so I thought I'd do a video on it and just see what's going on, because if it does go through, it could be big. Although it does have to be noted straight off the bat, this is all rumour, since it's not been mentioned on the likes of the BBC, The Race, Autosport, Motorsport.com, Sky Sports, ESPN, or any of the major news outlets. So don't take any of this as a "this is happening," because it's just something that's been floating around. Although it's Joe Saward that's been saying it, so there might be a small element of reality to it. So I guess this is another episode of Humour the Rumour, where I take a rumour that's floating around on the internet and sort of talk about it as if it is going to happen. So it's kind of like a, alright, we'll play along. So I'll just get it out of the way, because some people might take this as it is happening, even though it's not been reported everywhere else. Because there's going to be a lot of clickbait going on, isn't there? Because, well, this is YouTube. So what's happening then, besides the lighting being all over the place in this video, because we've actually got some sunshine in England today? Well, it's to do with the Concorde agreement. They're going through the process of signing the next edition of that document, and everything in it is rumoured to be boiling down to one thing: money. For those that aren't quite in the know, the Concorde agreement is a document that was originally drawn up by Bernie Ecclestone at the tail end of the FISA-FOCA war. It's pretty much the peace treaty for the FISA-FOCA war. It's a document that's incredibly complex and opaque. We will probably only ever know headline pieces of it, but in a nutshell, it details all the commercial expectations and obligations of all the teams for a season, or, well, the period in which this document is in effect. What the Concorde agreement essentially eliminated was the have-a-go heroes turning up in customer chassis that only did their home Grand Prix or 1 or 2 races a season. So it was basically F1's way of saying, don't forget, you're here forever. The main things to take away from that first document that was signed in 1981 is that FOCA was given the right to televise the races, which was then leased to FOM, 2 companies owned by Ecclestone. The other part is that the document guaranteed the team's protection from flights of whimsy from the FIA. It meant that Balestri couldn't come up with absolutely insane rule changes like the "your licence is tied to your contract" thing. The rights weren't signed over until 1992, as it so happens. Bernie required the approval of Jean-Marie Balestri to do so, and sent his mate Paddy McNally to do all of the negotiations because Paddy could speak French. Eventually, it was all negotiated, it was all signed off, and it all came into effect for the 1992 season. Not long after which, Max Mosley was elected president of the FIA, and between Bernie and Max, they made things take off through the 90s, as TV, sponsorship, development and other bits and pieces went absolutely insane. It was something ridiculous like the budgets tripling during the time this particular edition of the Concorde Agreement was in effect, 1992 until the end of 1996. It was then re-signed in 1997, again in 1998 because Williams, McLaren and Tyrrell weren't signatories on the 1997 one, 2009, 2013 and the latest in 2021. So this document is a very important part of Formula One history. Without it, the sport probably wouldn't be the multi-billion-dollar enterprise that it is now, and it also, at the same time, offers the teams all the protections they need. There's been 8 of these documents between 1981, when the first one was signed, and 2020, when the 8th was signed. The 2020 signatures all locked in, ready for the agreement to begin in 2021. Similarly, 1981 it was all signed, 1982 it came in. This is the document that essentially locked in the cost cap rules which were introduced for 2021. It also protected the value of the teams already in the sport, and this is where that $200 million new team registration fee came in. This document will be in effect until the end of the 2025 season, with the details of the new agreement looking to be signed at some point this year, hopefully. The new document will kick in for the 2026 season, when the sport has its new regulation changes with the engines and the aero and all of that stuff. Yeah, that's what that video was, wasn't it? I crashed that Lotus at Cops. But there's going to be one small problem if you're an established IndyCar, Formula E, Extreme E and V8 supercar team looking to make it into Formula One. The rumour is that the teams want to lock this Concorde agreement down so that there will be a maximum of 10 teams on the grid. It's been no secret that since Liberty Media took over in 2017 that the sport has taken on more of a American franchise system that you're going to see in things like major sports leagues in America. Those major sports leagues being Major League Baseball, the National Football League, the National Hockey League and the National Basketball Association. It's why, under this format, you're more likely to see teams move around. In the American League system, teams are locked in. Unlike, say, the football leagues of Europe, for instance, there's no authority that governs the sport from the top level right down to the grassroots. The Football Association in England does that as an example. Newcastle United play to the same rules that Walsall do. Walsall play to the same rules as #United, and #play to the same rules as the Holbeach United under-18s. Because of the promotion and relegation system, there's a theoretical probability, albeit almost zero, of Walsall making it to the Premier League. Likewise, a team in the Premier League can drop down to League 2. In the American system, they do have expansions to allow more teams in, but those expansions don't happen very often. The last team to enter the NFL, for instance, was the Houston Texans. Inter Miami was the last one to enter Major League Soccer, and the Seattle Kraken were the latest team to enter the NHL. Although the Arizona Coyotes are looking to move to Salt Lake City and join the NHL proper. It's also very, very rare for a team to go under completely and just be completely erased from existence. I've tried to find the most recent one, but it seems that it was all back in the 50s that the last time someone went bankrupt. So why move? Well, sometimes the teams want to take advantage of an emerging market. They want to move to a big city that doesn't already have a big team so they can take advantage of new fans there. They might be in financial trouble and just need to get somewhere where they're going to make more money. Or, in some cases, somebody's paid for a massive f***off stadium that they can move into. As has been the case in recent years, there have been a few teams moving to Las Vegas. In 2028, the Oakland Athletics will move to Vegas. The Oakland Raiders have already moved to Vegas. Basically, all the Oakland teams have moved to Las Vegas. Well, I mean, the Oakland Raiders have been all over the place. They were in Oakland, then Los Angeles, then Oakland again, and now they're in Vegas. And while we're in that part of the world, on the other side of San Francisco Bay, the San Francisco Giants used to play in New York. The LA Dodgers played in Brooklyn. The Pittsburgh Penguins were on the edge of moving before they won the Sidney Crosby sweepstakes. Meanwhile, in Europe, it's very, 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 very rare that a team will move. The obvious example is Milton Keynes Dons. They were once Wimbledon, but then relocated to Milton Keynes, and they're called Franchise FC for that reason. So with Formula 1, that's kind of the model they're following. Close it all off, keep the teams who are already in, and only expand when the teams are in a unanimous agreement. If you want to come in, you've got to buy an existing franchise, for want of a better phrase. This is what's happening with that Arizona Coyotes hockey team that I've just mentioned. They've been bought out by the same guy that owns the Utah Jazz basketball team. That's why they're moving to Salt Lake City. So let's say, for instance, somebody buys Haas. They can just come in, buy the team, rename it if they want to, and carry on. And in a weird way, that might actually be a cheaper way of getting into Formula 1. Teams are now approaching $1 billion valuations, particularly teams like Red Bull, since Verstappen is the new face of the sport. But there is one other rumoured thing that some want in this new document: independent ownership. Because you've got Red Bull and you've got, well, I'm just calling them Toro Rosso because the current name with, contactless payment credit card bulls or whatever it is, it's too much. Long story short, they're both owned by the same parent company. The idea is that if the team is going to stay, then Red Bull's involvement with that team has to end. Sell to an independent buyer, whether that's Michael Andretti or somebody else. Zach Brown is the person in the paddock that is most vocal about this because it seems that Toro Rosso have actually opened up a new aero facility in Milton Keynes where Red Bull is based. But the thing is, I don't see what the issue is, but then I'm not in the sport. By I don't see what the issue is, I mean, why are they so intent on protecting the money? I know that some are going to say that some of the teams are scared Andretti will beat them upon arrival. There's probably two teams at a pinch that should be looking at how dedicated Andretti is to getting into Formula 1 and thinking, yeah, we've got to pull our fingers out here. Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren have nothing to worry about, really. I'm from an era of the 107% rule. Having 26 cars on the grid isn't a priority for me. Quality over quantity. The English office versus the American office, to use my pop culture reference up for today. If you've got a car and there's space on the grid, knock yourselves out. So long as your car is within 107% and you can show you're actually trying, then go for it. Minardi knocked about at the back of the grid doing nothing for about 20 years and occasionally fluked a good result, but nobody was saying anything back then. Well, the teams were by around kind of 2003, but I think that might have been, we don't like this Aussie bloke more than, you're too slow, go away. And as people have said on other videos about this whole franchise system and this, that and the other, people have been saying, well, what about Williams? What about Sauber? What about Haas? They came in at different times, different Concorde agreements, different management. I am in agreement with Mohammed Ben Sulayem. More teams, fewer races. 12 teams and 20 races seems like the optimal balance for me. With Formula 1 cars now the most competitive they've ever been, at least in the gaps between first and last place, a couple of extra teams in the mix adds to the spectacle. You'll have a lot of teams in an actual dogfight on track. There hasn't been a non-qualification through being too slow in 12 years. Just thinking back to the days of, I don't know, the mid to late 1990s when it was teams like Arrows, Tyrrell, Minardi, Forti, Pacific, Simtech and so on, getting a slice of that Constructors' Championship pie was invaluable to them. Remember Marussia celebrating 9th place in Monaco like they just won the championship? That was because of the money involved. They'd got points where Caterham didn't. They were basically guaranteed money in the Constructors' Championship. Now, there's cost caps. If you win the championship, you stand to win about $140 million, which is the figure that Autosport has put up in the last couple of years or so. The cost cap is $135 million. So if you win the championship, your development for the next season is paid for. So why be intent on keeping all of that money if you can't spend all of it? Unless I'm overthinking things. I probably am, aren't I? But still, Andretti is not unfazed here. A new factory has been unveiled in Silverstone and Michael is looking at entering Formula 2 instead, maybe going the old Pacific 14 Eddie Jordan route of going from the lower leagues and then joining the top league when maybe a spot opens up. But if the 12 team limit becomes 10, then what does he do next? At this rate, the only way of having 12 teams on the grid is to buy F1 2024 and get on Photoshop and make your My Team car look, well, like it actually fits on the grid. So anyway, rumours abound once again, and this thing has been my opinions on that thing. If this thing has made you think things about the thing, then like this thing so I know I've done a good job. And for more things like this thing, then hit the subscribe button thing and the bell icon thing so you never miss out on anything that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever to the rad lads at Patreon for the support, and if you want to help keep things running around here, then there's a link to Patreon in the description, along with links to Discord, socials and other bits and bobs that you might want or need to know. Or there's super thanks and memberships if those float your boat. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.